Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the supportive viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Hannibal, Missouri, where this year you're likely to see banners, a new lighthouse, beacons, and a whole schedule of activities geared toward the 200th anniversary of the founding of Hannibal. Megan Rapp, if you're walking down Main Street in Hannibal, you have the opportunity. There's a little pocket watch, a little pocket, what are they called? Anyway, that doesn't matter. Little bitty park. Little bitty park on Main Street.
Yes.
And you can walk in and have a seat. And it's one of those places where if you're lucky enough to stumble on one of the beacons that have been built around Hannibal in commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the city of Hannibal.
Yes, we are very lucky. We had several local artists that participated in the Bicentennial Beacon project, and we placed them around town so that they can kind of, be discovered. We have the information on the Hannibal 2019 website, but it's also kind of nice if you don't know anything about them, you're just walking around and you say, oh, what's that?
Well, it's kind of neat. You stumble on one. Now we're in this little garden that we talked about just briefly. And if you stumble into the little garden, you'll also find that she has put out plants here for everybody to enjoy. But she also asked her grandson to build a beacon.
Yes, and so her grandson, who was 8, and he did the whole thing, and it was his idea, and so he decided to base it on, of course, Mark Twain's beloved Tom Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So on the beacon, you'll see things like the paintbrush, where Tom gets his friends to whitewash the fence. You'll see a slingshot, you see a corncob pipe, and so it's a lot of fun and has a special meaning, especially here since it's her grandson.
Now, why beacons? I mean, a beacon is often there would be a light at the top of a beacon to warn you about something. But why a beacon?
Well, we chose a beacon because it has several meanings. Of course, you think of a beacon in terms of maybe a lighthouse, as you said, something with a light on the top, warning you or guiding you. You can also think of it as a beacon of hope, because the Bicentennial is not only celebrating 200 years of history, we're also looking towards the future. And so we gave artists the raw materials and kind of some information about Hannibal, about the fact that Hannibal was named after Hannibal Barca, who was a Carthaginian general from North Africa. He's known for crossing the Alps on elephants, and a couple of other interesting tidbits about Hannibal. So some of the famous people that came from Hannibal, not only Mark Twain, we have Molly Brown, we have George Coleman Pogue, who's the first African American to ever win an Olympic medal from the United States. Of course, the unsinkable Molly Brown, William Lear, inventor of the Lear jet.
Sure.
So we have a lot of innovation from Hannibal, and so not just great things that happened in our past, but also wonderful things that we have to look forward to. So we wanted to give them just free reign to do what they wanted, take this information and make it your own. And so we have a wide variety of beacons.
It would be kind of fun if you're in Hannibal just to sort of wander around and see if you find them.
Yes.
Not know where they are, but just see if you find them, and then just kind of have fun with them.
Definitely, and we've had them put in public places. So parks, like you said, you might be walking down Main Street and come upon one. So it's a lot of fun. Some of them are geared towards kids. We have a great one that's almost a seek and find. She used Missouri state, like your state animal, your state song, your state bird, and kind of did a mural, and then there's see if you can find all of them. So that's great, interactive with the kids. We have all different varieties, and it's just a lot of fun to be able to enjoy them.
Thank you. Martha, you can't help but notice as you walk around Hannibal all the banners that are hanging from the light posts. And what a neat idea to ask people from Hannibal to submit their servicemen and women, who have gone before us, and honor them on the Bicentennial. What do you think of it?
I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's hard to drive around town without trying to check out every banner, but it's really interesting.
And I bet it's a learning experience too, because you see those names, you go, "Well, I didn't know that they, that person served or their grandfather served or whatever."
Yes, and the families, the groups of people that have the same name. You think, are they the same? Are they the family? Or
Yeah.
But it's a good idea.
It is a good idea. Apparently,
they
they had like over 200 submissions from people who
believe
wanted
so.
to honor, their relatives, fathers, grandfathers.
Uh-huh.
And you wanted to honor your father.
That's
Tell us
right.
a little bit about him.
Well, his name was Riley Francis Mudd, and he was in World War I, and he was in there about 2 years, and ended up in France. He was born in a little bitty town and ended up in France during the war.
What little bitty town was he from?
Well, it was around Monroe City, and it was Swinky or Indian Creek. He lived on a farm and had a 6th grade education, but was just a wonderful person. And
What would it have been like, you think, I think he was 21 years old when he went overseas. What would that have been like for a boy that grew up on a farm and didn't know much about the world?
I just can't imagine what went through his mind. I mean, he was a very quiet person, but we went on a trip to France ourselves, and not some friends of mine, and we were in the town. He was in Lyon, France, is where he was stationed. And when we went through the town, I thought, I can just wonder what Daddy thought of this place.
Yeah, and how different it would have been then than it is now. Yeah, and then to come home, and he did come home.
Oh yeah, I was wounded slightly, but nothing that bothered him. And he came home and went to work for the railroad.
Did he ever talk about his service?
Very little. I mean, he just was a very quiet person, and I had 2 brothers that served in the service. Maybe he talked to them, but
Well, that's the way they were. My dad fought in World War II and never told us a thing about it.
yeah,
And it's kind of a shame because I would like to have known, but they just thought that, nope, that life's behind us. Our new life has started, and that's just the way it is.
yeah, that was, he just never said anything at all about it. But
Well, that was supposed to be the war to end all wars.
that's what I hear, but unfortunately, it hasn't worked out that way.
Well, thank you very much, Martha, for visiting with us.
Appreciate it.
Megan, way back on the 100th anniversary of the birth of Samuel Clemens, somebody got the idea that we should build a beacon in commemoration of him, or a lighthouse on top of the hill, the highest hill in Hannibal.
Yes.
And that got done in what, 1938?
1935 is
35.
when it was finished, and yes, it was the 100th anniversary of Mark Twain's birth, and it's actually built on Cardiff Hill. Now, during Mark Twain's time, it was known as Hollidays Hill, but because of the book The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, where he called it Cardiff Hill, so many people came to Hannibal wanting to know where Cardiff Hill was that the locals actually renamed it after the fictional place in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So it is now known as Cardiff Hill.
Okay. Now, this is updated now because here we are on the 200th anniversary of the founding of Hannibal.
Yes.
And that's a brand new lighthouse.
It is. Now, it's not the first brand new lighthouse. The first lighthouse, which was lit in 1935, was blown over in an extreme windstorm in the 60s. So it was completely rebuilt in the 1960s. And then by the 1990s, it needed to be restored. And so it was pretty fully restored in the 90s. And so, again, time takes its toll.
Yeah.
So they decided to go ahead and reconstruct, just rebuild a lighthouse. And so we have it here. It was completed during the Bicentennial.
Wow. Now there's an interesting connection here between the lighthouse and the White House. because the very first one was the light switch was switched on by President Roosevelt.
Yes, the very first one, he was actually here to dedicate the lighthouse and turned on the light up above. Now, when it was reconstructed in the 60s, President Kennedy used a switch from the lighthouse to light it remotely. And then in the 90s, when it was redone as well, when it was refurbished, shall we say, it was once again lit remotely from the White House by then President Clinton. So while the lighthouse is finished, it hasn't been officially dedicated yet this year. So we will have to see.
So either President Trump or his successor is going to have to get to work to lighten this thing up, right?
You betcha.
Okay. interesting. This is not lit from the inside the way the old lighthouse was. Now you have it lit from the outside.
Yes, there is light at the very top, so it does still shine like a lighthouse does.
Yeah.
But we have the added benefit of lighting it up based on holidays and special events. So, for example, over the 4th of July, it will be lit red, white, and blue.
Neat.
Different occasions, such as breast cancer awareness, it will be lit pink. It's a really interesting way to show support for all the great causes. And on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, on the weekends, it will actually at 9 p.m. have a 1-minute light show. And so it will be lit up, of course free. You can come down and see all of the colors, all of the lights. It will be displayed along the lighthouse. And actually our Parks and Rec department is wanting people to not only post those videos, but to hashtag it Lighthouse Light Show, because it's going to be a great, just free little surprise for visitors and locals alike.
Neat. Well, thank you. Joni Carr, we were talking about the beacons that are around town. And you know, we got a chance to look at them, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to talk to one of the artists who created one of the beacons? Yeah. So we came to your shop.
Great.
Which is called?
Open Door Studio.
Open Door Studio. It looks like you invite people to create art here. That's what it looks like.
Come in and get hands-on and creative with us. You can come in and paint pottery, canvas, spin art, t-shirts, all kinds of different projects that you can come in and make here with us.
Is this where you created the beacon?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Tell us about the beacon.
So I was really excited to get to be able to do a project that represented Hannibal. And you know, when I think of Hannibal, I think of the river and the lighthouse. Those are the two main images that I have. So I wanted to create a beacon that represented the river and the power of the river, and then the lighthouse above it. So I used metal. And because the river is always flowing, I wanted my beacon to represent the movement of the river. So my beacon spins with the wind so that the river is flowing around the beacon. And then there are trees made of copper that'll turn green as they're outdoors. And I have a light at the top that's solar powered. And at night, it should light up and make a true beacon for Hannibal.
Well, you know, how long did it take you to do something like that?
It took me a few weeks. Yeah, a lot of cutting, a lot of Band-Aids.
Well, well, that's the other thing, because that metal. I mean, that's not every artist knows how to cut metal. That's a kind of a new thing for some people.
No, so it was a challenge. It was new for me. I don't do a lot of metal work. Luckily, my husband helped me with getting started, and he had a lot of the tools because he's worked with metal before. So it made it really fun, and I learned a lot, and plus I was really happy with the way it turned out.
Have you been around to see the other beacons?
I have. There's some really neat ones.
Do you think yours is the best?
Oh no, no. No, but it's been great to see everybody's creativity.
Yeah, I bet even the beacon makers especially like to visit the other beacons just to see what's going on.
What they came up with. Everyone is so unique. Yes. It's been a great project for Hannibal.
It certainly has. I guess they'll be up the rest of the year, and so people can sort of play a game like, let's just see how many we can stumble on.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Ashlyn, 200 years ago, the town of Hannibal was founded.
Yes.
And kind of coincidentally, the Mark Twain cave was found, or discovered at about the same time.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So it was in the winter of about 1819 when Jack Sims, an early settler here in Hannibal, was out hunting right over here on this hill behind us. And all of a sudden, when he was hunting, his dogs began to chase a cougar into this opening that you see at the top of the hill, which led Jack all the way down that passageway, discovering the cave for the very first time.
Did he discover the cougar too?
We don't know what happened to the cougar, but
But he lived through the experience.
He did, yes, he sure did. And at one point, the cave was actually called Sims Cave originally, named after him.
Okay. Did he hang around? Did he live here? Did anybody else, or did it just sort of remain sort of nobody found it again for a while?
From what we know, Jack did go into the cave quite often, but it was passed down through different people. So it was originally known as Sims Cave, then it became McDowell Cave, named after one of the doctors who owned the cave, and then finally Mark Twain Cave. So from what we know, we know that he definitely explored it a few times after that.
And we know it today as Mark Twain Cave, and also really one of the big tourist attractions in Hannibal.
Yes, it sure is.
Yeah, I noticed that there was a trolley that came out from downtown bringing people out here, and there are regular regular tours that go in and out of here all day long, and I guess all year too, right?
Yes, so we're open all year round. We are constantly taking people through here. And we have a tunnel entrance as well, so even if it's raining or snowing, we can bring people in here.
And I guess the story goes that this is the cave that Mark Twain wrote about with
It is,
his little
that's
heroes.
correct.
Huh?
Yes, so we get to tell the story of Tom and Becky, and you really just get to relive the adventures and see exactly where it happened.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty exciting, and
It is.
that, of course, you don't allow people in there because that wouldn't
do
be
not.
safe. But
No.
that would have been a hard place to get to
Yes.
scurry up that hill.
That is correct, which is why we eventually blasted the 1890 entrance to help with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. Not a problem.
Jim Waddell, one of the projects for this bicentennial year is going to be the log cabin.
That's correct.
It's going to be somewhere between the statue of Tom and Huck and that big old lighthouse that we see on top of Cardiff Hill, right?
Just about halfway in between, Mark. It's going to be placed just to the west of the stairwell going up to the lighthouse.
And what people are going to be able to experience there is exactly the way a log cabin would have been built about 200 years ago.
Well, a log cabin was the first structure to be in Hannibal, and of course this is our bicentennial year. So yeah, we're trying to recreate that historical aspect of our community. There's a little plaque in our Central Park in Hannibal that says that this is the location of the first log building used as a schoolhouse and a church in Hannibal. So that's actually what we're trying to recreate. We're going to build an historic log cabin, and we want to be able to use it as an educational tool down the road for school groups, to show them the old style of schoolhouse, and we also want to have an interdenominational church service in there.
Oh, cool.
Oh, it'll be wonderful. It's overlooking the historic district, and you can be able to see the river from there. So yeah, it'll be nice.
You and other volunteers have been doing some background work on this. You went down to Silver Dollar City in Missouri to get a tutorial on how to do it. Yeah. And your friend here, this is Jim, right?
No, that's Paul Miller over
this
there.
is
Yeah,
Paul.
he's doing
Okay.
the hard work there.
Okay, so what's he doing exactly?
Well, on a log, when you're getting ready to hew a log, we want to end up with about 6-inch logs. So you drop a chalk line, 2 chalk lines down the log to make a width of 6 inches, and then you go back through, normally with a double bit, and you cut up to that chalk line, notch into it, and then you go back with your broad axe and knock those sections off. Those are called jugs. That's what he's doing right now.
Ah, good shot there.
Yeah.
And you've got also tools, of course, to remove the bark and to turn the log when you need to turn it.
We use a cant hook to turn the log. We use a draw knife to bark them. That's correct. Yeah.
And all this is going to be done sometime this fall. And the thing is built properly. This should last many years, right? I mean, you should be able to use it for all sorts of occasions.
Oh, there's log homes that are 200 years old. Now, since we are going completely traditional, we're going to make our own chinking material. That's the stuff that goes in between the logs. Traditionally, it is made out of native clay, wood ash, salt, and water. Now, the problem with that, Mark, is that Missouri, of course, freezes and gets incredibly hot, and that swells and shrinks and it cracks out. So you have to re-chink every once in a while, but that's all right because that's still a hands-on demonstration when people come.
Sure,
so we'll
sure.
have to re-chink once in a while.
And let's see what chinking would look like over here. Now, these are the way your logs would fit together, and of course there are spaces there.
Yes, there are. Yeah, the logs, we're only hewing on 2 sides, so they're uneven on the other 2 sides, and we have to chink material in between them.
Yeah, and that keeps the cold air from coming in, or
Correct, correct, yeah, and the small
Yeah.
varmints.
You guys got your work cut out for you. It's going to be very interesting for the community to see you put it together.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, back in the old days, of course, guys could, the neighborhoods helped each other. Everybody participated, so a community could put up a log cabin in a couple of days. Now, we're even going to use a froe to make the shingles, a froe and a glut to make wood shingles for it, cedar shingles. So we're just trying to we've got a blacksmith online that's going to help us with the dogs for the shutters and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, good luck.
Well, thanks, we'll need it.
Michael Gaines, this is a big summer in Hannibal, isn't it?
It is.
Especially if you're in the arts business.
Most definitely. Arts and anniversaries, like 200.
Yeah, no kidding. And of course, you've got, right now, we're looking at some of the samples of some of your exhibit space, but some of this material is coming down very soon. Others of it will be up for the rest of the season. But did want to talk to you about what's coming up sort of in the fall.
Sure.
Because that's when our viewers would get a chance to get here and see what you're doing for the 200th anniversary.
Exactly. Lots of things going on in Hannibal in general, but within the arts, we decided to concentrate on exhibits and exhibiting some maybe lesser known Hannibal artists from the turn of the century, last century. And we found some interesting connections to Hannibal. And coming up in November, James Carroll Beckwith, which we've been continuing to do research on to study, his work. So James Carroll Beckwith.
Now this is him as an older man,
This is him
right?
as an older.
And he's from
gentleman.
Hannibal.
He is from Hannibal. He was born in Hannibal, and if you go to different sites, Hannibal's being recognized as the place he was born. He grew up in Chicago. Great Chicago fire burned down the art school he was going to, and he ended up moving to New York City.
Well, actually, it was probably a good thing for him, wasn't it? Because he got founded there, didn't he? And they found him. He was big time.
Yes, exactly. He became a well-known artist. He lived a lot of years in Europe as well. He was, John Singer Sargent, well-known American artist. The two of them did a huge mural in Europe. Came back to New York, and that's where he passed away. But again, everywhere you go, the sites you look at, born in Hannibal.
Now, here's what's interesting. You have a local person who lives in Hannibal who has a big collection of his work.
Sure.
And that's what your exhibit's going to consist of, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of a big deal to have them shown in public. They're kind of in a private collection. And if I am looking at these when we're doing the research, you see maybe they're owned by the Smithsonian, who owns at least 22. And this local collector, outside of the Smithsonian, we believe has the largest private collection of his work.
We'll pull up some of Beckwith's work. Now, this is not necessarily what's going to be in the exhibit, but
correct.
But this is just a sample.
It's
of his
just
work.
the Impressionist kind of time period. He exhibited in Paris expositions in 1889, 1890, and 1899.
I see Mark Twain. Pull up Mark Twain.
Yeah.
There he is.
So classic,
young man,
going back to remembering where he was born. So he did that in 1890, and that could have been exhibited in Paris in the.
Well, he was known worldwide, so certainly could have been.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he may have chosen that. So we're going to have the private collection, really kind of for the first time, exhibited together here at the Hannibal Arts.
And here's what's
Council.
interesting, Michael. People that live in Missouri probably never heard of Beckwith, but people in Europe know all about him.
Exactly.
People that know art know him.
And that happens a lot of time. You have those people who were born here that went on to become well known. They're not always known in their hometown. So we hope that through the bicentennial celebration, that through the arts, that we can play a role in introducing our community to somebody that they should be proud of, having been from Hannibal, and be able to spotlight his work.
Yeah, that's going to be a big deal. Now, at the same time, you're going to have, or about the same time, you're going to have another a local artist who still lives here.
Yeah, Stephen Schisler is actually a local elementary art teacher, and he's partnering with Steve Chow, who's a local historian and photography collector. So Steve Chow collects historic photographs of Hannibal. So here, for example, is the Orpheum Theater on Broadway. So Stephen Schisler, as an artist with his own particular style, might take that painting and colorize it and make it huge. It's not photograph size, it is painting size.
Yeah, like 2x3 or 3x4 feet, that kind of thing.
Exactly, fairly large. You got, old streetcar. And so it's a way to show history of Hannibal, but also like updated with full color for people to kind of see it in a different way. So there it is.
And so what he does is he uses the photograph as a model, and then he paints from scratch.
Correct.
What we see, the color that we see.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think it's a great interpretation of, again, each of them is interpreted, so off to the side there's the photograph, the painting, and then it might have a write-up on Lover's Leap. So it's really interesting a way to engage in the history of Hannibal and a community pride issue, spotlight local artists, celebrate our history.
What is this artist's name again?
His name is Stephen Schisler. And that exhibit, along with the Beckwith, will be November 9th through the 20th here at the Arts Council.
That's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's a really interesting interpretation of history to bring it to today.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Hannibal Bicentennial activities run throughout the year. For an update on the music and other festivities every week, check the website. With another Illinois story in Hannibal, Missouri, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.